The soft hum of the swift wind's engines filled the bridge as Commander Blue stared at the holographic display before him. His four-fingered hand tapped rhythmically against the smooth surface of his command chair. 20 years of patrolling the Orion sector had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was different. "Sir, we're picking up an energy signature," Officer White called out from his sensor station. "It's unlike anything in our database." His antennae twitched with excitement, a sign that caught Blue's attention immediately. The commander rose from his chair, his tall, slender frame casting a shadow across the gleaming floor. "Show me," he ordered, moving to the main viewing screen. The display lit up with a complex pattern of energy readings that made no sense to him. In all his years of service to the Unified Space Coalition, he had never seen anything quite like it. "The vessel just appeared at the edge of our sensor range," White continued, his fingers dancing across the control panel. It's big, sir. About twice the size of the swift wind." Blue's skin shifted to a darker shade of its natural purple, a sign of concern among his species. "Send the standard greeting package on all frequencies. Let's follow first contact protocols." He had drilled his crew countless times for this exact scenario, but this was the first time they would put their training to real use. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. Green lights blinked across various consoles as the automated greeting was transmitted, a series of mathematical sequences followed by basic linguistic patterns that any spacefaring race should be able to decode. Minutes passed. The unknown ship maintained its course, neither accelerating nor changing direction. Its presence felt like a weight pressing down on the entire bridge crew. "No response to our greeting, sir," the communications officer reported. "Should we try again?" Blue nodded, but something about the situation felt wrong. The ship's design was unlike anything in Coalition records, all sharp angles and geometric patterns, with what appeared to be massive weapon ports along its hull. Yet it made no aggressive moves, simply continuing its steady course through space. "Sir," White's voice carried a note of alarm. "The vessel's energy signature just changed. I'm detecting power fluctuations consistent with, well, I'm not sure what they're consistent with. Our systems can't classify them." Blue made a quick decision. "Send a warning shot. Standard protocol. 1/4 power, targeting a point 5,000 units ahead of their bow." It was a clear message in space: stop and communicate, or there would be consequences. The swift wind's forward cannons hummed to life. A burst of energy shot forth, intended to pass harmlessly in front of the unknown vessel. But at that exact moment, the mysterious ship performed a maneuver that should have been impossible for something its size. It shifted position with no apparent thrust, as if space itself had hiccuped. The warning shot, carefully calculated for its original position, passed much closer to the vessel than intended. Blue felt his heart skip a beat as he watched the energy burst graze the unknown ship's outer hull. The response was immediate. The mysterious vessel's power signature exploded across their sensors. Weapon ports that had been dormant suddenly blazed with energy. The ship rotated with impossible precision, bringing its main weapons to bear on the swift wind. "By the void," White whispered, his antennae now lying flat against his head in fear. "Sir, those energy readings, they're off the scale. Their weapons could vaporize us 10 times over." Blue stood frozen, watching as new data flooded their screens. The ship's design suddenly matched a legend he had heard whispered in deep space outposts, stories he had always dismissed as paranoid fantasy. The sharp angles, the geometric patterns, the impossible maneuvers. "Gods help us," he breathed, his skin now almost white with shock. "That's a human warship." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans, the species that had emerged from their solar system just 50 years ago and had already reshaped the understanding of warfare and diplomacy across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The species that had never lost a war, yet somehow maintained a reputation for fairness and honor. And they had just fired upon one of their ships. Captain Stone stood on the bridge of the Defiant, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The alien vessel's warning shot had barely registered against their shields, but it was the intent that interested him. These weren't pirates or raiders. Their approach had been too formal, too structured. "Analysis?" he asked, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. "Sir, they're coalition forces," Lieutenant Reed reported from her tactical station. "Their ship design matches known patterns from the Unified Space Coalition. Relatively peaceful civilization, but they're pretty jumpy about their borders." She paused, checking her readings. "And they're absolutely terrified right now." Stone nodded, watching as the alien vessel's power readings fluctuated wildly. Their sensors could pick up the panicked communications flowing between the alien crew members. The universal translators were already breaking down their language, mostly variations of "human ship." "And we're doomed. Poor bastards probably didn't know this sector was open for human traffic last month," Stone mused. He straightened his uniform, more out of habit than necessity. "Let's show them why humans have a reputation for being reasonable. Power down the main guns, but keep shields at full. And let's give them a little demonstration." The Defiant's weapon ports dimmed, but before the alien crew could feel any relief, Stone gave his next order. "Tactical. Execute maneuver pattern Delta 7. What happened next would be talked about in coalition bars for years to come. The massive human warship began to move in ways that defied conventional physics. It spun on its axis without any visible thrust, performed a perfect spiral around the alien vessel without ever pointing its weapons directly at them, and finally came to rest at exactly the same distance from which it started, all in under 10 seconds. Inside the Defiant, the crew worked with practiced ease, artificial gravity and inertial dampeners making the impossible maneuvers feel like nothing more than a gentle sway. Stone knew that on the alien ship, their sensors would be going crazy trying to understand how a vessel of this size could move with such precision. "Sir," Reed called out, amusement in her voice. "Their weapons officer just fainted. I can see him on their bridge through our quantum imaging suite. Their commander's skin has turned almost white. Apparently that's their equivalent of going pale with shock." Stone allowed himself a small chuckle. "Open a communication channel. Let's end their suffering." He paused as the channel crackled to life. "Coalition vessel Swift Wind, this is Captain Stone of the Earth warship Defiant. We acknowledge your warning shot and appreciate your dedication to border protection. However, I believe there's been a misunderstanding." The response came quickly, the alien commander's voice slightly shaky but professional. "Defiant, this is Commander Blue. We apologize for the warning shot. We were unaware that human vessels had been granted access to this sector." "A recent development," Stone replied smoothly. "The agreement was signed just last month with your government. I have the documentation ready to transmit, along with our flight plan and research mission parameters." The relief in Commander Blue's voice was palpable. "Research mission? You mean you're not a military invasion?" "Hardly." Stone smiled. "The Defiant may be a warship, but she's also one of our finest scientific vessels. We're here to study the unusual radiation patterns from your sector's binary star system. Though I must admit, Commander, your crew's quick response to an unknown vessel was impressive. Not many would have the courage to fire a warning shot at a human ship." There was a pause on the other end. "You're complimenting us for shooting at you. Bravery should be acknowledged, Commander, even if it's born from a misunderstanding." Stone gestured to his science officer. "We're transmitting our credentials now. But since we're here, perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange. Your crew's reaction to our maneuvers suggests you might be interested in learning more about human propulsion technology." The excitement that crept into Commander Blue's voice was unmistakable. "That would be most welcome, Captain Stone. Though I must ask, that movement pattern your ship just performed, how did you manage it without tearing your vessel apart?" Stone's smile widened. "That, Commander Blue, is just the beginning of what we can teach each other. Permission to send a shuttle to begin diplomatic discussions." The response came faster this time, all fear replaced by eager curiosity. "Permission granted, Captain. And thank you for not vaporizing us when you had the chance." "That's not the human way, Commander. We prefer to make friends when we can." Defiant out. The peaceful moment between the two ships shattered as 3 new contacts appeared on the Defiant sensors. Coalition reinforcements had arrived, their weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto the human vessel. The ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a perfect triangle formation, surrounding the Defiant. "Well," Stone said, leaning back in his command chair. "This just got interesting." He turned to Lieutenant Reed. "Status of the new arrivals. 3 Striker-class vessels, sir. Heavier armor than our friend Blue's ship, but nothing we can't handle. They're charging weapons, and they're not responding to Commander Blue's transmissions." Reed's fingers flew across her console. "They're using an old encryption protocol. The Coalition probably hasn't updated their emergency response codes to account for our new treaty." On the swift wind, Commander Blue was frantically trying to contact the reinforcements. "This is Commander Blue to Coalition Response Fleet. Stand down immediately. The human vessel is here legally. Repeat, stand down." The lead Coalition ship ignored the warnings. Its captain, an older officer named Gray, had spent 30 years dealing with border incursions. He hadn't gotten to his position by taking chances. "All ships prepare to fire. These humans think they can fool one of our patrols with fake documents. Not on my watch." Back on the Defiant, Stone watched the tactical display with mild amusement. "They're really going to try it, aren't they?" He pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Look sharp, everyone. We're about to give our Coalition friends a lesson in human engineering. Defensive pattern Omega." The Defiant's response to the threat was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. The massive ship's hull began to shimmer as thousands of microscopic plates adjusted their position. The movement created a ripple effect that made the vessel look like it was made of liquid metal. "What are they doing?" Gray demanded, watching the sensor readings from his flagship. "Target that ship before it." He never finished the order. The Coalition ships fired simultaneously, their energy weapons converging on the Defiant's position. But instead of impacting the hull, the beams seemed to bend around the human vessel, their energy dispersing harmlessly into space. Stone's voice came over all Coalition channels, calm and almost cheerful. "Coalition vessels, this is Captain Stone of the Earth ship Defiant. Your weapons are impressive, but I'm afraid they're not quite up to the task. Perhaps we could discuss this like reasonable beings." Gray's response was to fire again, this time with maximum power. The result was the same. The Defiant's metamaterial hull simply redirected the energy around itself, creating a spectacular light show, but causing no damage. "Sir," Reed reported, trying to hide her grin, "their sensors are going crazy trying to analyze our defense system. I think we just broke their understanding of physics." Stone nodded. "Let's give them something else to think about. Deploy the drones." From various points along the Defiant's hull, small objects began to emerge. Each one was no bigger than a human hand, but they moved with incredible speed and precision. Within seconds, hundreds of drones had surrounded each Coalition ship, their tiny forms glowing with contained energy. "Coalition vessels," Stone broadcast again. "Each of those drones carries enough power to disable your ship's main systems. They can move faster than your targeting computers can track, and they're controlled by an AI that can predict your actions before you make them. Shall we discuss peaceful options now?" Commander Blue's voice cut through the tension. "Captain Gray, stand down. I've confirmed their credentials. The human ship is here legally, and we've already begun diplomatic discussions. Please, don't make this situation worse." There was a long pause as Gray considered his options. His sensors showed that the drones had somehow bypassed their shields entirely. They could probably shut down his entire fleet before he could blink. And the human captain's voice didn't carry any hint of anger or aggression, just patience and perhaps a touch of amusement. "Very well," Gray finally responded, his pride struggling with his duty, powering down weapons. "But I want to see these credentials myself." "A reasonable request," Stone replied. "Commander Blue and I were just about to begin a cultural exchange. Why don't you join us? I believe your crews might be particularly interested in our shield technology, especially after that impressive display of firepower." The tension on all bridges slowly began to ease. The drones maintained their position, but their glow dimmed slightly. It was clear to everyone that the humans could have ended this confrontation at any time, but had chosen patience instead. While the coalition ships maintained their positions around the Defiant, a young intelligence officer on Captain Gray's flagship made a discovery that turned his blood cold. He burst onto the bridge, his tablet shaking in his hands. "Sir, Captain Gray, I found something in the deep archives about the humans." The officer's voice trembled as he spoke. They're the ones who defeated the swarm." Gray spun in his chair. Everyone knew about the swarm, a race of hostile beings that had terrorized this part of the galaxy for centuries. They had vanished 30 years ago, but nobody knew why. "Explain," he demanded. The intelligence officer connected his tablet to the main screen. Historical records flooded the display, showing scenes that made the bridge crew gasp. Massive space battles, fleets of ships using technology that seemed impossible, and at the center of it all, human warships. "The swarm attacked Earth, humanity's homeworld," the officer explained. "It was their first mistake. The humans didn't just fight back. They revolutionized warfare. They developed shield technology that could adapt to any weapon, drives that bent space itself, and artificial intelligences that could outthink any tactical computer." On the swift wind, Commander Blue was receiving the same information. He watched footage of a single human vessel taking on an entire swarm fleet, its strange geometric design now making perfect sense. It wasn't just for show, it was part of their metamaterial defense system. "And that's not all," the intelligence officer continued. "After defeating the swarm, the humans helped rebuild every world that had been damaged. They shared medical technology, helped restore ecosystems, and asked for nothing in return. They only had one condition, that the story of their involvement be kept quiet. They didn't want to be feared." Captain Stone's voice came over the comm system, surprising everyone. "Your intelligence officer is quite good, Captain Gray. Though I should point out that we didn't defeat the swarm alone. We just gave them a reason to reconsider their way of life. They're actually quite pleasant now, living peacefully in what you call the Crimson Nebula." The revelation stunned the coalition crews into silence. The swarm wasn't destroyed. They had been rehabilitated. It seemed impossible. "That's why we're here," Stone continued, his voice gentle. "The radiation from your binary star system isn't just unusual. It's similar to what we used to help the swarm evolve beyond their aggressive nature. We think it might help other species too." Gray's hands gripped his armrests tightly. "You mean to tell me that the most advanced warship I've ever seen is actually on a mission of peace?" "The best shields are the ones you never have to use, Captain," Stone replied. "But they're nice to have when someone starts shooting." There was a hint of humor in his voice that made several coalition officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. The intelligence officer wasn't finished. "Sir, I'm finding more records. The humans have been involved in every major peaceful resolution in the past 3 decades. The Meridian Dispute, the Crystalline Succession, the Quantum Gate Crisis. They were behind all of them. Always helping, always in the background, never taking credit. Because fear and awe make poor foundations for friendship," Stone added. "We prefer to let others find their own path, only stepping in when absolutely necessary." Speaking of which, the Defiant's energy signature suddenly changed, making every sensor on the coalition ships light up with warnings. "Don't be alarmed," Stone assured them. "We're just activating our main research array. If you watch the binary star system in about 3 minutes, you might see something interesting." True to his word, 3 minutes later, the distant stars seemed to shimmer. A wave of light passed through the space around them, visible only for a moment. When it passed, every crew member felt different, calmer, more focused. A gift, Stone explained. That wave will help stabilize the more aggressive tendencies in all species in this sector. Think of it as an apology for the misunderstanding and a down payment on future friendship. The Coalition crews stared at their readings in amazement. The energy wave had somehow passed through their shields as if they weren't there, yet their internal scans showed subtle improvements in crew health and neural patterns. Captain Gray finally found his voice again. I believe, Captain Stone, that we have much to discuss, and I owe you an apology. Not at all, Stone replied warmly. Now shall we begin those diplomatic talks? I believe Commander Blue was about to give us a tour of the Swift Wind. The shuttle bay of the Swift Wind buzzed with nervous energy as the human transport vessel approached. Commander Blue watched through the observation window as the sleek craft maneuvered into position. Even this small human ship moved with an impossible grace, its engines barely making a sound as it landed. The bay's air shield rippled as Captain Stone stepped out, accompanied by 2 crew members. They wore no protective suits, having already determined that both species shared compatible atmospheric needs. Stone's uniform was simple but elegant, with none of the excessive decorations that Coalition officers favored. Your ship is quite impressive, Commander, Stone said, looking around the bay with genuine interest. The energy efficiency of your systems is remarkable. Blue's skin shifted to a pleased shade of blue-green. Thank you, though I suspect it's primitive compared to your technology. He gestured to the door. Shall we begin the tour? As they walked through the Swift Wind's corridors, Blue noticed how the human captain paid attention to every detail, asking questions about things that Coalition engineers had taken for granted for centuries. It was becoming clear that humans didn't just have advanced technology. They understood it on a fundamental level. Your artificial gravity system, Stone commented, it uses quantum field manipulation, doesn't it? We experimented with similar technology in our early space days. Blue stopped mid-step. Early days? You mean you found something better? Stone smiled. We found many ways to manipulate gravity. The real breakthrough was understanding which method was best for each situation. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. Here, a gift for your engineering team. The device projected a holographic display showing dozens of different gravity control systems, each with detailed explanations in Coalition standard language. The level of technology freely offered made Blue's head spin. Why? Blue asked finally. Why share this with us? Stone's expression turned thoughtful. Commander, humanity learned long ago that the galaxy is too vast for any species to face it alone. Every race has something to teach, something to contribute. Your gravity system. It's more energy efficient than ours in certain applications. We could learn from each other. They entered the bridge, where Captain Gray and the other Coalition officers waited. The tension in the room was still present, but had shifted from fear to intense curiosity. Stone walked to the main viewport, looking out at the Defiant floating serenely among the Coalition ships. Your weapons officer had good instincts earlier, Stone said, turning to Blue. That warning shot was perfectly calculated. It would have been exactly right if we hadn't moved. The weapons officer, who had recovered from his earlier fainting spell, straightened with pride. You're not angry about that? On the contrary, Stone replied. It showed professionalism and restraint. You aimed to warn, not to harm. That's exactly the kind of thinking humanity respects. A young Coalition officer raised her hand tentatively. Sir, if I may ask, the stories about humans, are they all true? About how you uplifted the swarm and how you can travel between galaxies? Stone laughed softly. Some stories get exaggerated in the telling. We can't travel between galaxies, yet. We're still learning, just like everyone else. But we have found that the best way to handle superior technology is to share it responsibly. He walked to the Swift Wind's control console, pointing out various systems. Your ship's design, for instance, has great potential. With a few modifications to your power distribution network, you could increase your speed by 30%. Would you like me to show you how? The next hour passed in a blur of technical discussions and cultural exchanges. The Coalition crew learned that humans weren't the godlike beings of legend, but rather a species that had simply asked different questions about the universe. Their technological advancement came from thinking sideways rather than forward, from finding unusual solutions to common problems. The real secret to human technology, Stone explained as he helped modify the Swift Wind's power grid, is that we never stop asking why not. When someone says something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. As if to demonstrate his point, the lights on the bridge suddenly brightened, and the ever-present hum of the engines dropped to a whisper. The power readings showed a massive increase in efficiency from just a few small changes. Commander Blue watched his crew's excitement with growing understanding. The humans weren't just showing off their superiority. They were offering friendship, teaching rather than intimidating. It was, he realized, a far more effective way of wielding power than any weapon could be. The Defiance conference room hummed with activity as humans and Coalition officers gathered around a large holographic display. The room itself was a perfect blend of function and comfort, with adaptive lighting that adjusted to each species' visual preferences. Captain Stone stood at the head of the table, watching as his science officer demonstrated the principles behind human shield technology. The Coalition engineers leaned forward, their eyes wide as they witnessed centuries of their understanding about energy fields being gently but thoroughly revised. The key isn't trying to stop the energy, the science officer explained, manipulating the hologram with graceful gestures. It's about redirecting it. Think of it like a river. You don't try to block the water. You guide it where you want it to go. Captain Gray, who had finally relaxed enough to remove his formal outer armor, raised a hand. But the power requirements must be enormous. Stone smiled. Actually, that's the beauty of it. Here, let me show you something. He pressed a few buttons on the table's surface, and a new hologram appeared. This is the power system from your ships, and this, he added another layer to the display, is how it could work with just a few adjustments. The Coalition officers gasped as they saw their familiar technology transformed. The changes weren't massive or complex. They were elegant, simple tweaks that somehow multiplied the efficiency many times over. We're not just sharing our technology, Stone explained. We want to help you improve your own. Every species develops technology that suits their way of thinking. The trick is learning how to combine different approaches. Commander Blue, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. You're talking about more than just a technology exchange, aren't you? Indeed. Stone's expression turned serious. What happened today? The misunderstanding, the potential for conflict. It could have gone very differently. We'd like to propose a joint training program. Your crews and ours, working together, learning from each other. A hologram shifted again, showing a detailed plan for combined fleet exercises. The Coalition ships would learn human defensive techniques, while human crews would study the Coalition's impressive sensor technology. But more than that, the crews would live and work together, each learning the other's culture and perspective. Your sensor arrays, Stone continued, they're actually more advanced than ours in certain ways. The way you've developed quantum entanglement detection, we never thought of using it quite like that. We could learn a lot from each other. One of the Coalition engineers, who had been tinkering with a small device Stone had given him, looked up in surprise. You mean there are things you don't know? The humans in the room laughed warmly. Of course, Stone replied. The universe is vast, and knowledge is endless. The moment any species thinks they know everything is the moment they stop growing. Captain Gray nodded slowly, his earlier suspicion completely replaced by professional interest. These joint exercises, when could they begin? How about right now? Stone suggested. The Defiant's current mission to study the binary star system would be a perfect opportunity. Your ships could assist with data collection, and in return, we could demonstrate some practical applications of our shield technology. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. crews began exchanging positions, with Coalition officers touring the Defiant while human personnel explored the Coalition vessels. The initial awkwardness quickly gave way to excited discussions and shared discoveries. In the Swift Wind's engine room, a human engineer worked alongside Coalition technicians to implement the power system improvements. Their different approaches to problem-solving led to several unexpected breakthroughs, with both sides learning new ways of thinking about old problems. "You know," Commander Blue said to Stone as they watched the crews working together, "when we first detected your ship, I thought this might be the worst day of my career. Now it might be the best." Stone placed a friendly hand on the commander's shoulder, having learned that the gesture was respectful in Coalition culture. That's how humanity prefers to work. Turn potential enemies into friends. Transform misunderstandings into opportunities. It served us well so far. As if to emphasize his point, a cheer went up from the engine room. The Coalition engineers had just successfully integrated their first human-inspired shield modification, creating a hybrid system that was more efficient than either original design. "Captain," Blue said thoughtfully, "I believe this is the beginning of something remarkable." 6 months after the incident in Coalition space, the observation deck of Starbase Unity buzzed with activity. The newly constructed station, a joint project between humans and the Coalition, hung in space at the exact spot where the Defiant and Swift Wind had first encountered each other. Captain Stone stood at the vast window, watching as ships from both fleets maneuvered through complex training exercises. The Defiant led a formation of Coalition vessels, their newly upgraded shields glinting in the light of the binary stars. Commander Blue's Swift Wind, now sporting several human technological improvements, guided a group of human ships through the intricacies of Coalition sensor techniques. "Quite a change from our first meeting," Blue said, walking up to stand beside Stone. The commander's skin glowed a healthy shade of purple, indicating complete comfort in the presence of his human friend. "The best kind of change," Stone replied, gesturing to a nearby display showing the station's progress. "Look here, the medical bay is already treating patients from 12 different species, using a combination of human and Coalition healing techniques." The display shifted to show other parts of the station. In the engineering section, human and Coalition technicians worked side by side, developing new technologies that combined both species approaches. The residential areas showed families from both civilizations living together, children playing and learning from each other's cultures. The council was skeptical at first, Blue admitted, his antennae twitching with amusement. They couldn't believe humans would share so much technology without asking for something in return. Stone laughed. "We did ask for something in return. Knowledge. Your people's understanding of quantum communications has already helped us improve our own systems. That breakthrough last week in subspace theory, that came from a human physicist working with a Coalition mathematician." They walked together through the station's corridors, passing training rooms where Coalition security officers practiced human defensive techniques, while human crews learned Coalition tactical procedures. The once feared human warships had become familiar sights in Coalition space, their presence now bringing comfort rather than concern. Captain Gray's report changed everything, Blue continued, when he told the Council about how humans had helped the swarm evolve beyond violence, how you've been quietly guiding other species toward peace. Well, it made them see humans in a new light. They entered the station's central command center, where a massive holographic display showed hundreds of ships moving through nearby space. Coalition vessels sported sleek new modifications based on human designs, while human ships carried advanced Coalition sensor arrays. The radiation study of the binary stars exceeded all expectations, Stone noted, pulling up the research data. "Combined with your people's expertise in quantum field manipulation, we've already started implementing the peace-enhancing wave technology on other worlds." A young Coalition officer approached them, snapping to attention with a crisp salute that combined both human and Coalition styles. "Sirs, the first graduating class of the Joint Space Academy is ready for the ceremony." They made their way to the station's main assembly hall, which was packed with graduates from both species. The sight would have been unimaginable just 6 months ago. Human and coalition cadets standing together, wearing uniforms that incorporated elements from both cultures. "Remember when your weapons officer fainted at the sight of the Defiant?" Stone whispered to Blue as they took their places on the stage. Blue's skin rippled with embarrassment. He's commanding his own ship now, thanks to the training program. Though he still tells everyone about how he was the first coalition officer to encounter a human warship and live to tell about it. The graduation ceremony began, with each cadet receiving a combined commission, authorized to serve on both human and coalition vessels. The hall erupted in cheers as the first class of truly unified space officers took their oath to protect and serve both civilizations. Later, as the celebration wound down, Stone and Blue returned to the observation deck. The binary stars painted the space around them in shades of gold and purple, while ships from both fleets continued their joint exercises. "You know," Blue said thoughtfully, "when we fired that warning shot at your ship, I thought we were starting a war. Instead, we started a friendship that's changing the galaxy." Stone smiled, watching as a new group of vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel, representatives from other species, coming to learn about the Human Coalition Alliance. "That's the thing about first contact situations, Commander. You never know when a single moment of restraint, a choice to communicate instead of attack, might lead to something extraordinary." The station's lights glowed warmly as more ships arrived, each bringing new opportunities for understanding and growth. What had begun as a tense standoff between two ships had grown into something far more important, a blueprint for how different species could work together, learn from each other, and build a better future for everyone in the galaxy.